So thank you very much. My name is Lee Woolgar. I'm from the European Union delegation to Japan. I deal with ICT policy. Today I'm going to just quickly introduce the European innovation ecosystem and funding in Horizon 2020, the European Union's major program for research and innovation, and how that relates also to innovation startups. So there's a survey, an assessment which has been undertaken for over 10 years now by the Joint Research Centre in Seville, and they do an analysis of innovation systems in Europe based on a range of different indicators such as patents and firm expenditures on R&D and human resources and so on. And then they evaluate all the different countries within Europe along how they perform along these metrics. And then they rank the countries according to their performance, and you can see here countries which are classed as innovation leaders, strong innovators, moderate innovators, and modest innovators. So there's kind of diversity and a variance in overall performance across Europe in how countries perform across these different measures. So these are the measures that they include. So innovation is a rather difficult concept to understand, so you have to use various different measures to try and understand it and appreciate what it is. Perhaps they're still not capturing it in its entirety, but these are some of the things that they're using. So you have things like human resources, so doctoral graduates, people with secondary education, scientific publications, R&D expenditures, venture capital investments. Then you have activities by firms, so here you have R&D expenditures, non-R&D expenditures, SMBs collaborating with other companies, public-private co-publications, then you have PCT applications, trademarks and designs, and then you have these kind of output type effects where you have product or process innovations, marketing or organizational innovations, and so on. So it's a rather, there's a lot of data that's required from the Eurostat or from the OECD or the World Bank and so on, as they're trying to measure and understand what innovation is. Yep. A bit closer. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. And then they also compare European performance against that of Japan, and you can see that the EU is slightly below Japan in terms of the overall performance on these different measures that they're using at an aggregate level. But the gap is actually closing, and the EU is not doing too bad in many respects. They've been trying to measure innovation for some time, and the Oslo manual by the OECD, there's been various versions of this. We're now on the third edition, and this provided some of the early definitions of what innovation can mean, and I often used to refer to this when I used to talk about innovation quite a lot in my previous career. So we talk about product innovation, so the introduction of a new product with some new kind of innovative element introduced, and an improvement in process innovation, marketing innovations, which are increasingly reliant on applications of big data and so on, and organizational innovations in terms of how people work and so on. Now, how innovation also is being performed has been changing over time as well. So companies, it used to be this pipeline, this rather closed innovation model. Chesborough talked about the growth of open innovation, where firms would buy in technologies or spin out technologies if they were not compatible with the firm's core competences. And now we're talking more about this open innovation 2.0, as it's called, this kind of whole ecosystem of firms cooperating with universities, with startups, with users, and all these different organizations and different flows and interactions between them in this kind of model. And these ecosystem type approaches now are very popular at a policy level. We're seeing them also being talked about in Japan with the 5th Science and Technology Basic Plan. So Horizon 2020, this is the EU's major funding program for research and innovation. And you can see we have this kind of phrase that we're always using, from lab to market. So it's funding basic research towards later stages of the technology readiness level, towards market applications. And it covers basic research, it tries to address societal challenges, and it's open to participation from various stakeholders, so not just universities, but also companies and institutes, and also companies and institutes from Japan as well. So within the rules of the Horizon 2020, innovation and how the program should contribute to innovation is explicitly mentioned just here. This is the overall budget distribution, so you can see that excellent science, it's 3/4 for each one of these 3 pillars. So excellent science, industrial leadership, societal challenges, so energy, environment, healthcare, and so on. Excellent science, European Research Council, and industrial leadership in technologies such as energy or ICT, and so on. Even with excellent science-related initiatives, there's funding which is available to researchers who get such grants to go for proof of concept and so on, if they think that their research has potential for industrialization. So these are the 3 pillars. There's also some specific programs which are kind of component of Horizon 2020. There's an SME instrument, and this is really trying to promote the innovative activities of SMEs. SMEs have often been a kind of there's been a kind of gap in how policies have been implemented towards SMEs to try and spur them towards becoming more innovative. And there's lots of funding that you can see to provide more kind of funding to these SMEs so that they can build new technologies or collaborate with other organizations and build new technologies. There's also funding towards risk financing and trying to nurture the venture capital environment in Europe to angels and other VC organizations, and here's just a list of some of the funds that are available. There's also inducement prizes, so if you look at the different work programs that exist, you can see that there's some prizes where they will say, oh, you have to introduce some technologies that will enable us to develop more clean energy and so on, and these are also being implemented. So the Horizon 2020, within all these different within these different funding blocks, there's subcomponents which try and link the research and innovation research with innovation. So it's not just this linear model type thinking anymore, but more kind of cooperation and exchange and interactions similar to this innovation, Open Innovation 2.0. So funding is one aspect, but also the market environment is also quite important, particularly in the ICT area. Since 2015, there's been a big push to try and improve the. So they have free flow of people, capital, and they really want to try and improve the digital environment in Europe now. So it's been rather fragmented. There's 28 different member state countries. And it's been difficult for one company, say, if they're starting in, say, Germany or France or something, if they want to move to expand into different countries, there's been a lot of barriers and issues that they've faced in doing this. So the Digital Single Market Initiative has been trying to provide a greater degree of harmonization in the overall regulatory frameworks and market structures in Europe for digital innovation and growth. So they've introduced 16 different initiatives over these 3 pillars related to e-commerce and parcel delivery, geo-blocking, so it's easier to access websites from different countries, and you can have your parcels delivered between different countries as well. Platforms, that's a big thing. Security and personal data, so personal data is also being discussed at the moment today. Standards as well, and skills, so training people into coding and so on. So my time is now over. So I'm going to close here. I've done it. Yeah.
Perfect. I don't know if actually we also have maybe time for a question. If there is, I do have one. Can you hear me? Yes. Do you have? You talk about open innovation. There are some institutional initiatives promoted to favor open innovation.
Well, I mean, in terms of the overall structure of Horizon 2020, it's kind of got an open innovation flavor to it anyway, because it requires that different organizations should cooperate together, so at least 3 organizations. So typically in a research consortium, there will be universities with industry and with some other like public research organizations as well. So this has this kind of flavor already. There's also the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. Now, this is a training kind of program, but they're also heavily engaged with bridging the kind of education industry type of collaboration, which is popular now. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Say a round of applause for our guest.